All right, so today's going to be my second Q&A video. There are quite a few questions on other videos that I'm short on time today. I didn't have time to get to those. So this is purely going to be the questions on my first Q&A video. So this is almost like a 1.5. The third, basically the third installment will have all of the questions, whether it's on this Q&A or basically throughout the videos in between. I just have to dedicate like an hour to sit down and actually dig through the comments to find what questions I didn't answer right then and there that I told somebody I would actually answer in the Q&A. So disclaimer, I won't be getting to everything, but I have like 6 or so questions here. First comment, actually not a question. This person just said, I found you thanks to NH, and he is right. You have great content. I already subscribed. Wish you all the best for your channel. That's from Magda386. I really appreciate that. Obviously, thanks to NH for the shout out on that progressive overload video. And yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you coming to my channel and subscribing. Yeah, if you can learn anything from these videos, I think my job here is done. So next one from JD Lifting. Thank you for answering my question. When it comes to me, I decided to modify your beginner routine into something like upper lower with chest, back, shoulders, and triceps on upper days, then legs, back, biceps, and abs, and calves on lower days. Now I have a question about exercise selection. Do you think it would be better to do same exercises 2 to 3 times a week, or to do 3 different variations? For example, when it comes to chest, do bench press on upper A, weighted push-ups on B, and then double bench on day C. So this is, you obviously can still get results training this way. If you're a beginner, I wouldn't necessarily recommend training like that. I would probably leave that for the more intermediate or advanced lifters if that's something that you do want to pursue. Reason being, when you are a beginner, you do still need to learn the skill of lifting. And while it's not necessarily trying to just get a 1-rep max on any of these lifts or get as strong as you possibly can, you do need to have a little bit of a higher frequency, generally more than once a week, if you want to actually kind of get that skill down of that lift itself. Like if you're doing a dumbbell bench, not saying that the push-ups and the barbell bench won't translate into that, but they're all a little bit different in their own ways, so you do need to actually learn the skill of that lift itself. It's pretty much as simple as that, so I'll leave that there. I would say doing each lift twice a week should be fine. There's some lifts you can do 3 times a week, and there's some lifts that you just shouldn't do 3 times a week. So in general, if you're going to be in the gym 6 times a week on that upper-lower split, I programmed it out so the first 2 days or the first 2 pairings, so A and B, and then for the upper lower are the same as C and D. So you're repeating each of those days twice throughout the week, and then there are 2 extra days to create 5 and 6 that are programmed in as kind of like optional, but do the days if you need help building the habit. Those are obviously different variations than the lifts I have programmed it on the first 4 days. So it's up to you. I think twice a week is kind of the sweet spot, but getting more stimulus and mostly building the habit by going in for that 3rd session isn't a bad idea. I probably just would do a different lift. But the lift that you want to prioritize and get better at, you should be doing that twice a week, 100%. Let's see. So next question comes from Marco Kolench, I think I pronounced that right, maybe. Question, volume and frequency for bodybuilding. Is it better to do a bit more volume in one workout and then rest for 2 to 3 days, or is it better to do more sessions throughout a week and divide my volume like that? So I'm assuming you mean per muscle group. And at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily matter. All it really comes down to is just individuality with this, because some people are going to be like people that need a lot more volume per session. Like let's take, just for example, let's say myself. Let's say my kind of peak volume before it starts turning into like an extreme point of diminishing returns, aka junk volume, if I can get like 12 or 13 quality sets for one muscle group in a workout, obviously that's the higher end of the spectrum, then why would I cut myself short? Because let's say I just prefer training that way and it works perfectly fine for me, then so be it. I'll stick with that. And obviously there's benefits of that type of volume too. So it all comes down to where you're at in your lifting, what volume you're currently doing. If you're doing like 3 sets a week per muscle group, jumping up to like 15 sets a week or a session isn't really going to help you that much. It's kind of just overkill since you don't actually have the work capacity in the first place to do that. But it all comes down to what works best for you, because some people will hit diminishing returns and enter junk volume at 6 total sets per session per muscle group. Some people might be closer to 10 or 12. You have to find where you're at. If you can get 12, I mean, if you're trying to, like, let's say you're trying to maintain a muscle or it's not the highest on your priority list, if you can get 12 quality sets and grow a ton from that in one session, you still have, if you're training 6 days a week, now that opens up 5 entire days to prioritize other muscle groups. There's a bunch of different utilities for this, and obviously I'm not going to try and explain it all right now, but that's a really good question, and I will probably have a video on that on its own in the future. Next question comes from Luca. What do you think about doing barbell curls like a traditional called main movement and progressing it via step loading or something like that instead of the classic 3x10? Not a bad idea. I mean, part of the purpose of my channel is to treat every lift as an equal. And I'm not saying that every lift will build you an equal amount of muscle, but you have to apply that same effort and treat all lifts like they do. Because if you're just going to treat a smaller lift like it has no purpose, now you're getting nothing out of it. And generally those like smaller lifts have no downside, and except for like random overuse injuries if you're more injury prone in the first place. Like, if I treat a band face pull like it's a small movement, I'm not going to get anything out of it. But if I went like balls to the wall on it and actually put in a lot of effort, I'll get great gains, and there's literally like no side effects as long as you have good form. So that's a big part of my channel. I think that answers part of your question, but to answer the progressions on it, generally the best way to be doing this is, I would say, a rep goal system, which is what Steve Shaw created, or evolving rep ranges from natural hypertrophy. He's got a bunch of videos on his channel. They're both really great. They're kind of similar, but in general, I'd focus on adding reps. And with a movement like a barbell curl, since there is a little bit more of a variable when it comes to actual technique, I would probably shoot for, like I said, and I think this was in my previous Q&A, I can't quite remember. Basically, you're going to be doing like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Don't worry about the day-to-day progressions or week-to-week progressions. We're looking at month-to-month, quarter-to-quarter, even year-to-year progressions, because your strength increases is not going to be that crazy like it would be on a heavier movement where you can load a bunch of weight on, like a squat or a deadlift. But I'm all for slow, long-term, sustainable progressions on these isolation lifts. This is something that a lot of people ignore. Next question is from Kempton Bryan Weight Training. Hi, I just uploaded a video asking for help fixing my bench press form. If you could watch it and give your input, I'd be very appreciative. In relation to fractional plates, you can purchase large washers to use, which are much cheaper. Great comment there. I will definitely take that into consideration. I do still think novices should barbell squat. Would be wise. I think there's a little typo in there. So I do still think novices should barbell squat. Would be wise, or it would, whatever. He's saying no, basically novices should barbell squat. I believe it would be a vital skill to start developing early. As for the strength work, I was mainly referring to lower reps. I'm quite torn on sets of 3 to 6 for my barbell curls, and I've been unsure if I should ditch that aspect of my training. My form is gradually degraded due to emphasis on progression. So I would probably recommend going a little bit lighter than 3 to 6 on barbell curls. That's generally going to be a little bit too heavy, and we have to keep in mind when you're doing an isolation lift like this, especially something that's free weight where you don't have support for your body, when that bar is in front of you, it creates a moment arm, and that's going to be pulling a lot. It's kind of pulling on your feet and your whole body. You'll start to feel forwards. That's why a lot of guys lean back when they're doing curls. It's not necessarily to cheat, but you have to, just so the weight literally doesn't pull you forwards. So when you first start a curl, your arm's like this, and the weight is basically driving through all your joints into the ground. And then halfway up, now the weight is like a foot in front of you, the whole length of your forearm. That's pulling you forward. So if you can go a little bit lighter and do a little bit higher reps, that makes a ton of sense. Maybe save the heavier work for something where you have a little bit more stability from a machine or a platform. Something like maybe a seated dumbbell curl or basically a spider curl. Preacher curls I'd be a little bit cautious of, but you still could go for it. It's just up to you. I would just like I said to the last guy, I would generally advise 12 to 18 reps on the barbell curl. If you find that your biceps are burning like crazy, probably go a little bit closer to 10 to 12. You don't want the burn to be the reason that you fail your set. You want it to be the actual muscular failure. The more advanced you get, the less burn you'll feel in general. Some people still have that burn well into intermediate advanced lifting. But for somebody like myself, I don't really feel a burn anymore in my muscles. I built up a little bit of strength, a little bit of pain tolerance. A lot of it's mental too. So I'd recommend going a little bit higher, shooting for a long sustained. It's going to look like this, like a healthy stock, where you're just 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Like, don't worry about the week to week or day-to-day progressions. But as long as your overall tonnage is going up over the long term, that's what matters. It has to match your muscle growth. If your strength just skyrockets real quick, that's basically too fast for muscle growth. Anyways, you're probably cheating on your technique or just experiencing some type of noob gains. So that's the probably most answer I'll give today. I'm trying to keep it relatively quick. So Lightbringer 357. What is your opinion on pull-ups versus lat pull-downs as a main back movement for hypertrophy? For example, weighted chin-ups versus underhand lat pull-down, trained in, say, a 3 to 6 rep range. So I think they're pretty similar. I do really like both. Obviously, they both have their time and place, but it's hard to say which one's better. I just think they're a little bit too similar, especially when it comes to hypertrophy. I really like both. I mean, overall, the pull-up, even if you have a multi-grip bar, you only have a couple different options just from a grip perspective. But with a lat pull-down, there's a bazillion different attachments you can use. So generally what I would do if I had both of them in my program is keep a different grip on my lat pull-down than I do on my pull-ups, so you can work basically a little bit different of an angle on each lift. So yeah, 6 to 8 rep range. Little bit heavy for lat pull downs in my opinion. I do like to go closer to like at the lowest, maybe like 8 to 10 on my last set, and then generally about 15 is probably the lightest I would go. For pull-ups, you can get definitely more out of 6 to 8 for sure. But in general, I do advise against going as low as 6 to 8. I don't think it's a bad idea, but I do think you could get a lot out of doing like sets of 8, 10, 12 on pull-ups. Let's see, Blast Creator asks, how do you know when you should add volume? Generally, it's going to be when your progression stalls. Obviously, this is a tough question to answer without any context, but I would say if your progression has stalled in terms of muscle growth and overall strength progression, as in tonnage on those lifts, probably volume is going to be the first thing that you need to increase. But at the same time, if you're not consciously aware that all of your other fundamentals are in check, we need to make sure that everything is in check. So whether it's frequency, whether it's volume, even just the lifts you're actually doing, we need to make sure everything's in check before we do just randomly increase volume, because a lot of times people aren't training that hard. They're leaving a bunch of reps in the tank. They're like, well, I'm not getting results, so let me just do more. Very logical, right? The problem is a lot of guys are missing one of the fundamentals, and their first resort is just to add volume. And eventually you turn into one of those guys on Instagram that takes a bunch of steroids and does like 18 sets for his chest in one workout. I would say make sure your overall RIR/RPE, so your proximity to failure, is in check. Make sure your frequency is in check as well, so 1 to 3 times a week. Generally 2 times a week is going to be the sweet spot. I wouldn't recommend once a week for everybody. And yeah, make sure volume's in a good range anyways. Make sure you're doing about like 8 to 18, maybe 20 sets a week per muscle group. But if you're doing like closer to 20 sets a week and you're not gaining any muscle, that's a very clear indicator that there's something else that's incorrect with the program. Julian P says, just want to say Micro Gains is a great brand for 1/2 and 1/4 pound plates. Found them on Amazon, but they're great. Calibrated too. Perfect. So I'll have some washers and some actual plates now. So that will probably be one of my next upgrades. Do you have any DIY gym equipment, or is it all officially made? So I don't think I do have anything DIY. Actually, you know what? I do. So my low row, so basically my seated cable row attached to my lat pull down is homemade. I made the cable all by myself. It's pretty easy and pretty cheap too. You just go to Home Depot. I think it's quarter cuts. I actually said this in my gym tour video yesterday. Either silicone or urethane covered, quarter-inch is the way to go. Just measure it out first. It can never hurt to get some slack because you could always cut it off later. Get some cable clamps, get a couple like heavy-duty carabiners, and you basically have an extra cable. You can also do this and buy a pulley system that you can screw into basically your ceiling or a beam or something. And that's actually what I did during quarantine a couple years ago when the gyms all shut down for months. I basically hooked up a pulley system, got a couple cable attachments, even just bought some random rope from Home Depot, got a one of those orange Home Depot buckets that you can actually see. I just use it for storage now if you check my gym tour video. And I got a bunch of bricks because bricks, I think they're 4.5 pounds each. So I would just calculate the weight I was doing that way. And now I could do like one arm chest flies. I could do tricep push downs. I could do face pulls. I could do like single arm lat pull downs and stuff like that. So yeah, I really, really do enjoy making like DIY stuff like that. I think it's a lot of fun. There's a channel called Kaizen DIY Gym Equipment. They have a few really good tutorials on there if that's something you're into. But no, other than that, I mean, I bought all this stuff, yeah, from actual brands. I think it's like half new, half used, but I don't know. I'm not like overly picky with like the brand, and I don't need to have Rogue anything. I mean, I think that's a little bit overkill for a lot of stuff I have down here. I just like to have utility. I like to have variety, and that's kind of what I'm after. But yeah, I talked about that enough yesterday in my gym tour video. So I'm going to leave it at that today, guys. I will be answering all those other in-between questions in my volume 3 of this. But yeah, with that being said, thank you for watching.